All right, so today we're going deep, really deep into the life and ideas of a guy named Eliphas Levi.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yeah, you know him, right? 19th century occultist, kind of a big deal.
Oh yeah, wrote a bunch, influenced all sorts of later folks.
Exactly. We've got his bio, some of his writings, even stuff about what he thought about, like the sign of the cross.
Sign of the Cross, really?
Oh.
Never heard that one before.
Yeah, it's wild, but we'll get there.
Looking forward to it.
So Levi, born Alphonse Louis Constant in 1810. The guy starts out totally normal, dad's a shoemaker.
Humble beginnings, the classic story.
Exactly, but get this, even as a kid, Alphonse, he's super talented at drawing.
Artsy, interesting.
But his parents, they're like, nope, you're going to be a priest. So off he goes to seminary, St. Sulpice, in 1832.
Traditional path, makes sense.
Right, and he's doing well. He becomes a subdeacon, teaching catechism and all that.
Catechism, wow. I remember those days.
Oh, me too. And then he gets bumped up to deacon, one step away from priesthood.
On the fast track, what happened?
Here's where things get wild. 1 week before ordination, he's like, I'm out.
Out, just like that.
Yep, drops the whole priesthood thing. Later, he said, he figured out how faith and science could work together, no conflict.
That's deep, especially back then.
Yeah, but you can imagine his superiors were not happy.
Breaking those vows, chastity, obedience, all that. Big no-no.
Huge deal. And get this, he kept wearing those clerical robes for years, till 1844.
Hold on to something there, maybe.
Maybe. But other sources, like A.E. Waite, they suggest different reasons, like strange views or debts, who knows?
Multiple perspectives, always fun to consider.
So now we've got Alphonse Louis ditching the priest life. He decides to go by Eliphas Levi. It's like a Hebrew version of his name.
Interesting choice, shedding the old identity.
Right. And now, as Eliphas Levi, he becomes this well-known thinker, writer, hangs out in Paris and London.
I bet he drew a crowd.
Oh, yeah, all the esoteric types, romantic artists, symbolists, you name it.
The guy had a brand.
For sure. And then he does something even more unexpected. He leaves the Grand Orient de France.
The Masons. Why would he do that?
He felt they lost the true meaning behind their symbols and rituals. To him, it was all about tolerance of all beliefs.
Sticking to his principles, I see.
Definitely. And it's important to note, Levi, he wasn't just making stuff up. He was influenced by tons of thinkers.
Like who? Give us some names.
Okay, ready? Joseph de Maistre, that counter-enlightenment guy.
Okay, I know him. A bit intense, but influential.
Then there's Paracelsus, Robert Fludd, Swedenborg, that whole crew.
The mystical and alchemical crowd.
Exactly. And throw in Fabre d'Olivet, the Rosicrucians, even Plato and Raymond Lull.
Wow, that's eclectic. You can see how his ideas got so unique.
It's a real melting pot. But okay, let's talk about his personal life for a second, because it was, well, complicated.
Complicated how?
Well, for one, the guy was broke. He tutored to make ends meet. Around 1838, he met this mystic, Simon Ganneau.
A mystic. Sounds right up his alley.
Totally. And through Ganneau, he might have even crossed paths with Flora Tristan.
The socialist feminist. That's an interesting connection.
Very interesting. Then, in 1839, he tries out the monastic life at the Abbey of Solesmes, but couldn't handle the discipline. He left pretty quickly.
Sounds like he liked to do things his own way.
No kidding. And then in 1841, he writes La Bible de la Liberté, which translates to The Bible of Liberty, and boom.
Boom. What happened?
He gets thrown in jail for it.
Whoa, talk about trouble.
Yeah. And then fast forward to 1846, he marries Noemi Cadio.
Love at first sight.
Not exactly. He actually preferred this other woman, Eugenie C., but he married Noemi to avoid drama with her dad.
Oh, yikes. That never ends well.
And it didn't. Noemi left him in 1853 to be with this Marquis guy. They officially divorced in 1865.
A messy situation for sure.
Battle mess. And on top of that, he experienced a lot of loss with his children.
Oh, no, that's awful.
Yeah, his twins died shortly after birth, and his daughter, Marie, passed away at 7.
So tragic. None of his legitimate children lived to adulthood.
None. But there's another layer to this. In 1846, the same year he married Noemi, he had an illegitimate son with Eugenie C.
Wow, a lot going on that year.
Right. And Levi, to his credit, acknowledged his son and took care of him. Some say his descendants are still in France.
At least there's a bit of a brighter spot in all that.
Yeah, a bit. But A.E., he tells a slightly different story about the marriage. He mentions a 16-year-old sculptor and hints at an annulment because of her age and Levy's previous vows, although Waite himself points out that secular priests weren't bound by celibacy before they were ordained. It's just another reminder that the details of his life can be tricky to pin down.
Makes sense. Piecing together the past is always like that.
Okay, so around 1850, Levy hits a rough patch. Financial trouble, spiritual crisis, the whole 9 yards.
Midlife crisis, the classics.
The works. He's 40, and this seems to be the moment he really dives headfirst into the occult.
When it all clicked for him.
Yeah. It's also around this time his political views shift. He initially supported Napoleon III's coup in 1851.
Napoleon III, the one who became emperor.
That's the one. Levy thought Napoleon was a man of the people, a restorer of order, even praised him publicly.
And then what?
He quickly realized how authoritarian the regime actually was. In 1855, he gets imprisoned again.
What? Again? What for this time?
He wrote a song criticizing the emperor, got him in hot water.
Risky move, but he clearly wasn't afraid to speak his mind.
Not at all. And his views on the people also changed during this period. Early on, he was skeptical, could the uneducated masses actually govern themselves? He kind of agreed with folks like the Saint Simonians and that Joseph de Maistre we mentioned earlier.
De Maistre, yeah, he was all about a spiritual authority led by an elite.
Right, but after 1849, Levy's view changes. He comes to believe that with the right education, the masses could create a harmonious society.
Interesting development, seeing the potential in everyone.
Yeah, he becomes super active in intellectual circles, publishes in the Revue Philosophique et Religieuse using his real name.
Spreading his ideas, going public.
Exactly, and he starts writing some of his most important books. Histoire de la magie in 1860, La Clef des Grands Mystères, as a follow-up to his Dogme et Rituel.
Dogme et Rituel, that's dogma and ritual for anyone who doesn't speak French.
Thanks for the translation. He also wrote Fable et Symbole, Le Sorcier de Meudon, La Science des Esprits.
Wow, productive guy. And then Le Grand Arcane, right?
Right, but that one was published after he died. All of these, though, they became super influential, especially after his death.
Posthumous fame happens to the best of us, right?
I guess so. And the rise of spiritualism probably helped boost his popularity.
Spiritualism, all the rage back then.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing, Levy. He wasn't a fan of spiritualism. He thought that after death, only mental images and these astral forces remained.
Not full-blown spirits hanging around.
Nope. And he thought these forces could be manipulated by, you guessed it, magicians.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
Right. He also believed that all those spooky things spiritualists were seeing, that was just magnetic currents at work.
Trying to bring science into it.
Always. And he was very careful to present himself as a humble scholar, sharing his knowledge for the good of humanity, no personal gain.
The selfless seeker of truth.
Right. And he never claimed to be part of any secret society or anything like that.
Interesting. So if not spiritualism, what was his jam?
He had this whole system, right. And a big part of it was the tarot. He incorporated that into magic.
Tarot cards?
Yeah, he really brought it into Western occultism. He's the reason they're so popular in magical practices.
Huh, never knew that.
Oh yeah, huge contribution. And he had very specific interpretations, like the pentagram. 1 point down, that's evil. 1 point up, that's good.
Interesting. Simple but effective symbolism.
Right. And he also influenced Helena Blavatsky in the Theosophical Society, another major player in esoteric thought.
The guy got around.
He did. There's this story about Levy meeting some British esoterists back in 1854.
Ooh, what happened?
Well, they wanted him to, perform magic, show off his skills.
I bet they were eager to see what he could do.
Oh, yeah, but Levy was hesitant. He thought it could be seen as trickery, plus it was expensive to get all the materials.
Practical concerns.
Totally. But they eventually convinced him. They gave him what he called a complete magical cabinet.
A magical cabinet? What's that? Like a magician's prop?
More like a collection of tools and ingredients for rituals and stuff.
Ah, I see. Like a magician's toolkit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So A.E., in his intro to Levy's History of Magic, he lays out what he sees as Levy's 9 core principles of magic, all based on doctrine and ritual of transcendental magic.
9 principles. That's a lot to unpack.
It is. But basically, it goes from, hey, magic is real, to true science can only be learned through magic, with religion being like a simplified version for the masses.
Kind of elitist, don't you think?
Yeah, a bit. He definitely believed in a hierarchy of knowledge. But anyway, 3 big concepts underpin his whole magical thesis: astral light, the will, and the imagination.
Okay, break those down for me. Astral light first. What's that all about?
Imagine it as this universal energy field, a way for magical effects to travel. Levy even connected it to scientific ideas of his time, like Reichenbach's odic force.
Trying to find that link between mysticism and science.
Always. But, to be clear, Levy didn't invent these ideas. He himself said the astral light was similar to odic force, and he gave credit to guys like Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, those 18th century French mystics, and it also ties in with Franz Mesmer's animal magnetism.
Animal magnetism. Now that's a throwback.
Right. Levy used astral because he believed in astrology made sense to him.
Makes sense. And what about will and imagination? Those sound pretty straightforward.
They are. Paracelsus, centuries before Levy, said those were essential for magic. We even have a quote from Paracelsus saying how a strong imagination and unwavering faith can make magical things happen.
So basically, believe it hard enough and it will happen.
Kind of. But Levy, even though he was all about magic, he also warned about its dangers.
Dangers. What kind of dangers?
He said it could drive you crazy if you weren't grounded in reason, and if you used magic for selfish reasons, bad things would happen.
So like a karmic backlash.
Exactly. But okay, now for the really interesting part. Levy said that the Christian sign of the cross, it's actually Kabbalistic.
Kabbalistic, you mean like from Jewish mysticism?
Exactly. He said it represents these fundamental oppositions, the balance of the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water, all key in a lot of occult traditions.
That's a pretty radical interpretation.
Oh, yeah. He even talks about an occult verse of the Lord's Prayer, saying there were two ways to understand it. One for regular people, one for priests and initiates.
Like a secret meaning hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. And he describes this initiated sign of the cross as a much bigger gesture. You touch your forehead and say, "To thee," then your chest belongs, left shoulder the kingdom, right shoulder justice, clasp your hands, and mercy. And then this Latin phrase, Tibi sunt malchut et gebura et chaspa eonas.
Which means,
Thine are the kingdom and the power and the glory forever.
wow, I never knew the sign of the cross could be so complex.
Right. Levy claimed that what he called Gnostic profanations made the church lose this original Kabbalistic meaning.
It's fascinating, but hard to know if it's true.
Definitely. But it shows how Levy blended different spiritual and esoteric traditions. Okay, last thing. Let's talk about that whole socialist background and how it relates to his occultism.
Yeah, that's a big question. Did he just ditch socialism for magic?
That's what many people thought, that Constant the Socialist vanished after the Second Republic, replaced by Levy the Occultist.
But is that accurate?
Not according to this historian, Julian Strube. He argues that this idea of a complete break, it was made up later by 19th century occultists, and scholars just kind of went along with it.
So no clean break.
Nope. Strube says that Constant developed his occultism right out of his socialist and post-clerical thinking.
So the two are connected.
Exactly. And Strube argues that he never stopped pushing for socialist ideals, he just did it through a different lens, a more esoteric one.
Interesting. So what about that other theory, that Polish guy initiating Levy into the occult?
Right, Józef Maria Honorewski. Guys like Pappas and Paul Shakornak, they said that's what turned Levy towards the occult. They point to letters between Constant and Wronski in 1853, showing how much Constant admired him.
So was he a big influence?
Strube doesn't think so. He says that any influence Wronski had was brief and not that deep. He's also critical of Pappas's research on the matter.
So more of a footnote than a turning point.
Right. And Strube also argues that the whole idea of a distinctly French esoteric tradition also played a role in creating this separation between Constant and Levy. He points out that A.E. Waite also presented a separate narrative, but Strube thinks it's lacking detail about Constant's early life.
So according to Strube, it's more complicated than a simple before and after.
Much more. He suggests that Levy saw magic as a way to create a new order, a new social hierarchy.
So still thinking about social structures, just in a different way.
Exactly. And he quotes Levy saying that his kind of magic was different from goetic and necromantic types, that it aimed to change people's opinions and beliefs, to create wise leaders for the masses.
So a more positive, almost utopian vision of magic's role in society.
Exactly. And Strube argues that Levy's 1854 trip to London, the one where he got that magical cabinet, that wasn't what made him obsessed with magic. He says it was this whole socialist magnetic thing driving his interest. Even though Levy himself said his approach was about merging science and religion, it really goes to show that the relationship between his socialist past and his occult future was way more complex than we might think.
Definitely a lot to think about.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that Eliphas Levy, he was a truly unique figure, leaving the priesthood, becoming a key figure in Western occultism, His life was full of surprises.
And I have to say, that whole thing about the sign of the cross, that really stood out to me. The Kabbalistic origins, the lost meaning, that's classic Levi. Finding connections between seemingly unrelated things.
Totally. And the fact that people are still debating how his socialist past and occult present fit together, it shows how complex and influential he was.
He was a thinker who refused to fit in a box, that's for sure.
And that's what makes him so fascinating. He was trying to bridge science and religion with magic. So here's a question for you, dear listener. What do you think this says about us, about humans, and our need to find meaning and order in the world? Does it matter what system we use, whether it's science, religion, or even magic?
I think that's a question worth pondering. It's something Levi himself was grappling with, and it's still relevant today, maybe even more so.
Well said. And with that, we'll leave you to contemplate the enduring mysteries of Eliphas Levi.
Happy pondering.
Until next time.
Bye for now.
See ya.
So long.
Later.
Okay, take care.
You too.
All right, I'm out.
Me too.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.